Hi! Today I'm sharing an updated version of my natural gut stringing tips and techniques video. If you've seen my original video, which I made 3 years ago, I hope you stay tuned. This one is slightly shorter, more comprehensive, and you may learn some new tips. Speaking about shorter videos, check out this one first. In it, I'll share 5 essential tips you should know before working with natural gut strings. Alright, let's go inside. Alright, so before I get into stringing this racket, I will divide this into 3 parts: the preparation, the main string installation, and the cross string installation. And periodically you'll see some videos flashed onto the screen, which is videos that I did before, referencing what I'm talking about. So I went ahead and already cleaned the string clamp rails, and I used denatured alcohol. And this is something that Babolat recommended when I got this Babolat Evolution Tour stringing machine. It's supposedly better than rubbing alcohol to clean any hard surfaces, and it does remove grease and any kind of oils better than rubbing alcohol. So I went ahead and applied the denatured alcohol to the rag. I did clean the rails. I even went underneath the base clamps here, under here. Here's something different that I didn't do in my first video. I used this, it's a piece of Velcro that I attached to a popsicle stick, and I'll bring it up here. You can see how I folded it over, and it has an adhesive backing, so all I did was just fold it over and just attach it to this popsicle stick. So on one side, what I do is I use this thicker side to clean inside the teeth of the clamp, and it fits just right for my clamps when it's in the open position. And I did have some alcohol on here earlier, so I used that for that. And this folded portion on the tip, I can get inside the teeth right here, so I'll clean that out with this. And then I can even use this part that's not attached to the stick, which is thinner, and run it through the jaw grippers of my tension head. So so this is a useful tool that I made, and again, it's just a popsicle stick, and it's a piece of Velcro that I folded over to make this cleaning tool. All right, so now that the machine is nice and clean, the next thing you want to do is make sure you install the grommets. And again, I'll flash another video, but basically I'm going to be checking the areas where the main strings start to angle down on the outside mains. All right, so next I'm going to cut the string lengths, and basically I'm going to string this 2-piece. This has a very open string pattern. It's one of those S models, and I think it has 14, it's 16 mains and 15 crosses. So this will be an easy racket to string. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the cable tie. And what you want to do with the natural gut is you want to let it relax, because it's been coiled in the packaging. So what you want to do is do that. And when you measure it out, I'm going to just cut into 2 pieces. I'm going to be running it through my fingers and actually inspecting it by touch and by sight. And this is Babolat VS natural gut in 16 gauge. So Babolat is a good brand of gut, so it shouldn't have any problems. But what I'm going to do is first I'll cut an angled tip on all the tips there. And I'm just going to run it through my fingers as I'm measuring it out. And I have I have marks on my machine where I measure my string out. So I'm just going to measure out 20 feet. So you can see that as I'm pulling the string, I'm actually feeling it with my finger. And that's how I'm doing it, by touch. And if I see any blemishes in the gut, then I might just grab another set and just save this and return it if it's a bad set of gut. All right, so I have to concentrate on my measurement. I think that was 9 feet. This would be 12, 15, 18, and 20 feet. And again, I did other videos where this particular video where I pointed out 5 tips when stringing natural gut. So if you want to just check that out, it's a 12-minute video where you can get some quick tips. So I have my measured out string for the mains. And I find it easier to always string 2-piece when working with natural gut, because then you're handling less string. With the one piece, you're always going to have that long side that you're handling more. So it's good to have a two-piece, to go at two-piece when stringing natural gut. Now you always want to make sure you're not going to kink the string with natural gut. It does weaken the string. So I am going to start my mains a little bit different from, I did another video where I started it like this, so I'm not going to go into detail, but basically I'm not going to use a starting clamp on the outside of the frame. So I'm just going to go ahead and run my string here. I have a clamp riser that I use to raise the clamp up to the level where I want to close the clamp. And then I'm going to lock the base. So I'm going to go ahead and set this at 56. Now I didn't mention earlier, but this will be a good time to mention it, is that you want to adjust your clamps for the natural gut. And basically you want to go to a lower setting, meaning that you don't want the clamps to be squeezing on the string very tightly. So you can see where it is right now, and I'm going to just bring it down one. Now 56 is kind of on the tight side. It is 16 gauge. And I do trust my clamps, so I'm going to go with a lower setting on my clamps. So I have to go ahead and set this down here. And you really just have to know your clamps as far as what you think will hold. If in doubt, go a little bit tighter, but again, you want to avoid having any kind of teeth mark or ghosting on your string. So I'll go ahead and start pulling it. Now I did set it at 10% pre-stretch. I typically would pre-stretch my natural gut for the fact that I try to eliminate the initial creep in the string overnight. So I have it at 10%. And I'm going to use the one string overlap, and that's what I typically do. So I'll go ahead and I did one on the right, so I'm doing two main strings on the left. So everything I'll just proceed like normal, but again, because I'm doing a two-piece, you're avoiding that long length of string. And if you're doing it one piece, a lot of times that long side can tend to get tangled. So you have less of that when you have that a shorter length of string. All right, so now I'm on the left side. And again, I'm just going to go with the one string overlap. So anytime I go over one string from the previous side, that's when I switch side. So this is my third main on the right. And before I turn the racket, I'm just going to run this main here and leave it on tension. Grab this next string on the left side. One thing you should notice is whenever I move the clamp, when I take it off, it's always releasing the base before the teeth of the clamp. And that's to avoid scuffing of the string. If you release the teeth, sometimes the drawback can cause the string to rub against the clamp, and then it will scuff the string. So you want to avoid that as much as possible. And that's true especially for natural gut or multi-filament strings. That could be a problem. Now this is a used frame, or it's being restrung, but anytime you have a new frame, you want to make sure on the outer mains that you're holding in the grommet right there so that it doesn't pop out on you. And then either cut the string or cut the frame. All right, so I'm coming down on the last main. I'm going to use the knot function here, where it's increasing it by 5 pounds. All right, so I'm just going to cut a little bit of the string length off. I don't need all of that. And tie my first knot here. I like to always try and go to the closest hole if possible to avoid any unnecessary string run. So I'm going to go with the Parnell knot on this. I do use that in most cases. That's what I use. I like the fact that it is a self-tightening knot. Now, one tip when handling natural gut, when you're cinching the second knot, before you release the plier or starting clamp, you can rotate your pliers or starting clamp in a clockwise direction, and that'll help keep the fibers of the natural gut more together, especially if it's starting to get soft. So I'm going to go ahead and again release the base before the teeth of the clamp. So this side's done. I'll go ahead and tension the other main string on the other side. Again, I want to make sure I hold that grommet in just in case. Basically, I'm going to do the same thing. Before I release this, I'm just going to rotate it clockwise just to keep those fibers together. If you rotate the gut counterclockwise, it'll unravel the gut. So that's why I'm going clockwise on that direction. All right, so the mains are done. We're going to get into the cross strings. I want to make sure I have a tip on the ends always to make it easier to insert into the hole. All right, so when I start the crosses, I always look for the second or third cross and work my way backwards. Again, I did another video where it does help install the crosses faster, but more importantly, it does reduce the friction. So I'm going to go to the third cross string. I typically like to tie off on the top right hand corner. So by going to the third string, I know that it's always going to come in this direction. It'll come here, go back here, and back here. So I'm just going to go right over. And the thing about this too is this string right here, I don't know if you can see that, but it's really close, these two grommets. So there is a lot of friction that can build up right in that section. So by doing this string right now first, you're really reducing the amount of string length that you have to pull through if you didn't start it this way. So I'm just going to go ahead and weave this through. So I'm going to pre-weave the first 3 strings before I even apply tension to it. And you need about 2 arms length of string. So really, this is about 4 feet of string right here that I'm going to use to weave the first 3 strings. So that's how you reduce the amount of friction, because you're not pulling a lot of string through those first 3 crosses. So I'm just going to allow a little bit of space here so I have enough room to weave this through. And then we have our first cross on the top here. Now I'm going to use the starting clamp on the outside, and I did another video where I use various starting blocks and even an offset tube. So I'm going to go with the the one that I did in the video, I used in the video. It's the one that David Hall made, and he does sell these, so I'll leave a link down below. And what I like about it, it's very wide, so it does place the starting clamp way outside the racket, but it also ensures that this part that's being clamped is not going to be it's not going to be where the string bends over or be part of the knot. So I'm going to go ahead and tension the first string. I just need to make sure I have enough of a loop so I can put it into the tension head. And again, you want to make sure you're never going to twist the gut, so it's important that you're just keeping that in mind. All right, so I got enough string length here. I'm going to pull that first string. And I have to tension the first 3 strings before I can come back here to release the starting clamp and tie off. So always making sure you don't want to have that twist on that back end there. So just watching that. Got one more cross here. Once I get through these first 3 crosses, then I can start doing the one ahead on the cross. In fact, I can start it now because I want to take advantage of this untensioned string right here. All right, so now we are definitely getting into the weaving of the cross strings. And there's various methods in weaving the cross strings. So let me just finish this and I'll get into that. All right, so I got enough of a loop here so I can apply tension to this string. All right, so that's the 3rd cross string. So now I can, after I get this through, I can go ahead and apply tension to that, re-tension the first string and then tie off. I'll go ahead and weave this one here. So I'm just going to weave this, but leave this like this for now and come back to it just to get it out of the way. All right, so I'll use the knot function here. I'm going to go ahead and apply my tension there. One of the good things about using a starting block or an offset tube, what it does is it allows you to tie off every knot, use the same tie off knot for all the knots. But the other thing is that there is going to be a little bit of drawback after you release this clamp. And if you use a starting knot, what's going to happen is that the tension on this first cross is always going to be almost at full reference tension, because basically you're pulling tension on the knot. And if this tension is, so this will always be tighter than the bottom cross basically. So now by tying off this one and in the end tying off that one, they'll both have the same or similar kind of tensions. All right, so now we're getting into the one ahead technique. Now I did another video and there's a couple of methods when you're doing this, so maybe you can guess, or maybe you know the difference between a small loop and a big loop. So I hope you know which one is better, and if you don't, then check out that video. All right, so earlier I mentioned that there's various methods of weaving. I use the pulling method, where I'm always pulling the string towards me with a loop. There's other stringers that string using the tip of the string and typically will push it away from their body. And then there's a third type that you'll see that's popular by the Japanese stringers, where they actually stitch it up and down. And I can't do either one of those, so I can't demonstrate those methods. But if you're interested in the pulling method, I have a video on the IART website where I teach the pulling method in 3 stages. So as a premium member, you can take advantage of that if you want to check that out. All right, there's another thing I wanted to show you. When I'm pulling each string, what I'm doing is, this would be the natural angle just based on how the racket is positioned. I have the auto lock feature on my machine, so I do use it. And what I do is I don't have a Diablo, but I can put the string into the jaw grippers, but before I push the button, I actually try to angle my racket as straight as possible. So you'll notice how straight this line is right here. Basically, you want to keep the string straight versus angled. Well, straight versus angled out of the grommet. I just feel like when it's pulling, it does keep the string here straighter. I did another experiment where I actually tested pulling at an angle or pulling straight. And it did make a slight difference when you pulled straight, not a significant difference, but what you'll notice is that after I finish stringing this racket, I hardly have to even straighten the strings, the cross strings, because of the way I'm pulling the string. So again, I'm always putting it in here and then finding that straight angle. I'm still using my other hand to hold it in a straight line, but a lot of times it'll just stay pretty straight when you're pulling the string that way. So if you have an auto lock feature, I would recommend, or at least try it and see if you like doing it that way. It does take a little extra rotating of the racket, but again, you'll notice at the end I'm not going to even straighten the strings, and it'll already be pretty straight. All right. So as I pull the string through, I'm always being careful that if I feel a little bit of resistance, that I'm pulling it slowly, but also making sure that the gut is not going to unravel. Typically that's going to happen when there's blocked holes, like from the main string that's blocking a cross string hole. I haven't reached that point yet, but again, when I get to the last, okay, after this string, I'll show you 3 techniques that you can use when encountering hard weaves. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm on the last 3, and let's say if you're encountering a very hard weave. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and tension this string, so I'm going to create a hard weave. So now I don't have that one ahead. All right, and I have a lot of extra strings, so I'm just going to cut some off because I don't want to have to run this through if I don't have to. So there's 1, 2, 3. I got enough there. I'll leave a little extra. All right, so this first one I'm going to do, again, I don't have the one ahead anymore, so I created a hard weave for myself. But let's say you are getting to a point where there's a lot of you feel like you're having a hard time going all the way through. So you can do the half-half technique, half diagonal technique, where you weave half of it through the center, and then you weave the other half, but you leave a loop in the middle. Just make sure that when you weave this next string, you're always paying attention that either up or down appropriately. So what you're going to do is go like this. And so the advantage of this is that by pulling at diagonal, you're reducing the friction. And you can just pull it in like this with the loop in the middle. So you got that. And then when you get to this part, just make sure that you help this loop straighten out right there. Okay, so all right, this next one I'm going to demonstrate the half diagonal pull. It's similar to the previous one, but what's different about this is you're not going to leave a center loop. So I'm going to go ahead and weave half of it through. And then what it'll do is just pull the full length. And what's good about these techniques is that you're going to avoid the twisting of the gut, especially when it's on the back end. And what I'm also doing is making sure as I pull it, I'm actually rotating the gut in a clockwise direction. So it's actually keeping the gut, the integrity of the string, more in a twisted state. So what you don't want to do is have that gut unravel. So now that I got it halfway through, I'm just going to do the other half diagonally. And again, making sure I weaved it correctly from the middle. All right, so I do have a blocked hole on the outside right here. So what I want to do is make sure that I'm going to pull it through slowly, and I'm rotating the string a little bit, and then making sure this loop will come out straight right there. Just trying to straighten out that string angle there. All right, so we're down to the last cross string. Now this is when the weave is very hard, and this is a stitching technique. And what you would do is, again, it's important that you just have enough string length that'll make that string there and enough to reach the tension. So I'm actually going to cut off a little bit more just to reduce that. All right, so around the outside, what you're going to do is just make sure you're going to pull the whole string length. And the advantage of this is to reduce any kind of twisting, because when you get down to the bottom, there's the tendency that the natural gut could start unraveling. So by doing it this way, you're just weaving one string at a time like this, and I call it the stitching technique. So you're just going to go like that. So once you get to the end, there's no pulling of the string, so that's helping with reducing the twisting over there on the back end. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, so this tip is actually starting to unravel a little bit. I'm just going to make a sharper tip there and make sure I can get it through the hole. All right, there we go. And all right, so in this last tie off here, sometimes when you get towards the end, because the string's been handled so much, you can tend to soften up the gut and then tend to unravel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and tie the knot first. Okay, I'm going to rotate it again like I did all the other knots. Release the base. And this one, yeah, definitely release the base before the top teeth. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut, after I cut it, I did mention I was going to cheat a little bit. What I'm going to do with this knot is I'm going to use a super glue or a crazy glue to secure that knot, to make sure that the fibers stay intact. But what you want to do is first, if you haven't used your tube in a while, to make sure you test it out, because you want to make sure the flow is not going to come out really fast. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a drop on this card here. I'll bring it up so you can actually see the drop. So I just want to make sure that it's just going to be a drop coming out of the tip of the tube. So you can see that, okay, that bubbled up a little bit. So I don't want that to happen. I just want to make sure, yeah, it comes out like that. So right there, yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that one drop on the very tip of the string and really try to make sure that it can run down the knot tail, but I don't want to get it on the frame. And again, this is to just keep that the fibers together. So I'm just going to use the tip of this kind of like a paintbrush. Once I get that drop out from the tip, then it's just going to follow the knot tail. So I'm just going to get it right there, and it's right there. So it's on the knot tail and part of the knot, but again, I just want to make sure I don't get it onto the frame. So that'll be a way that you could make sure that your knot tails don't unravel. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to straighten the main strings because typically they do come inwards. So I'm just going to do that, but I'm not going to straighten out the cross strings. And again, it might be because, well, I'll bring it up and show you at the end, but this is, again, a pretty easy racket to string because it's such an open string pattern. But because of the way I was pulling the string from the tension head at a straight angle, or not at an angle, but straight, let's take a look at how these cross strings look, because you're going to notice that they're pretty straight. Well, yeah, so I'll hold it up here. So let me just take a look at it. I mean, I might have to straighten out maybe just this one right here. But yeah, the less straightening you have to do at the end, I think, is always a good sign, because you're getting, you know, your tension is coming out, I think, more true than if you had to straighten your strings out. Right, so just a quick review. When I installed the mains, I did use the one string overlap. Again, you can check that video out. I feel like the tension on the left and right side becomes more even that way. When I installed the crosses, I did start from the third cross and work my way backwards to help reduce the friction. I also showed you 3 ways to handle hard weaves, and another tip on how to keep your string so that it prevents it from unraveling. I hope you enjoyed watching my updated version of natural gut stringing tips and techniques. Thanks for watching, happy stringing, and let your strings play.